Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda Smith, and this is my UTEC Model Book and Build presentation. So I'll start off by sharing with you my snowflake that I made. Originally, whenever I was sketching out my plan for my snowflake, I knew I wanted to do a heart-shaped cutout. And then as I was trying to round out my snowflake some more, I became worried that I was actually going to be cutting my snowflake completely apart because I had accidentally messed up one of the folds. I had gone and folded horizontally instead of continuing to fold towards the diagonally towards the center of the snowflake. But then actually, whenever I opened up my snowflake, I found that it was still intact, and actually it turned out better than I had planned it. So that's one of the great things about maker spaces and getting to experiment and tinker with some of the materials is that you can plan and plan and plan. And sometimes things might not look like they're going quite right, but then sometimes you can open them up and they turn out better than you expected. So for my book and build presentation or for my project, I decided to really focus on some of those social emotional learning activities. During the pandemic, I know it's been very hard on a lot of students and a lot of families. And this year, I have definitely seen that some of the things my students are really struggling with are things like taking turns with each other, sharing materials, using kind words to help them solve their problems. There's not a lot of patience and not a lot of understanding. And so this is a lesson that we touch on all throughout the year. We usually start with the original Have You Filled a Bucket Today by McCloud. And then now that we're in the middle of the school year, we read this story, How Full Is Your Bucket for Kids, written by Mark Rath and Mary Reckmeyer, illustrated by Maureen J. Manning. And this is just another really great illustration of how everyone has an emotional bank account. Everyone's feelings can be influenced by their environment, the people around them. And in this story, the little boy Felix, he's having a hard time. He and his sister are not getting along. People were making fun of his backpack. Um, just a whole bunch of things that are just kind of outside of his circle of control that are really affecting his feelings and his mood. And his sister even knocks over his tower of blocks. And she actually did that because he didn't want to share. And he kept telling her, no, you're going to mess it up. So you got to leave my stuff alone. And she's like, oh, I'll promise I'll be careful. But then he keeps telling her no, 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 and not including her. She ends up knocking over his blocks, and they're both very upset. And so their grandfather is telling them about how everyone has an invisible bucket. And whenever you try to dip out of someone else's bucket, so that's also dipping out of your bucket. And then that's whenever you are left feeling really sad or upset or frustrated. And so, something that we can do to make ourselves feel better is to actually fill each other's buckets with kind words and encouragement and just love. And whenever we fill other people's buckets, that can actually in turn fill our buckets as well. And so, Felix goes to school. He's ending up having a terrible day, but then he starts to turn it around by just showing some kindness. And even his teachers and some friends start paying him some compliments. And as each of those nice things starts happening, he can feel a drip, drip, drip down into his bucket. And then before you know it, his bucket is feeling full and the day has been saved. And so I was thinking a lot about my students and even myself. We can get to those points where our buckets can feel like they're running on empty. And I know I like to rely on other people to fill my bucket, but you know what? Another great way to fill our buckets is to fill other people's buckets. And so that's what I would like to empower students to do with this makerspace activity. So, starting off with the using step. So, this is a great time to generate some student interest by enjoying some samples of projects that they could make. So, these could be things that either I or other teachers have created, or things that maybe students from other classes have brainstormed and already developed. Just off the top of my head, I'm thinking about the five love languages, and some of the ways that people can feel loved are through words of affirmation. So those, when you life gives you lemons, make lemonade, all those encouraging statements, the kitten posters saying just hang in there are great ways to reach those people. Other for others, it might be physical touch, hugs. Well, during the school day that may or may not be an option, and so we're going to trade in that physical touch for what I'm going to call warm fuzzies, little pom-poms that are just really nice and soft to touch, and you hold them in your hand and it gives you a nice warm feeling, kind of like a little tiny hug. um, so we could even do things like acts of service, and just using those kind of words, taking some time out of our day to let others know that they are appreciated. And so I plan to have a bucket on the tables filled with some of these ideas to help just get the kids interested and thinking about what kinds of things they would like to fill their buckets with. When we get to the tinkering phase, this is a time where students can really spend a moment planning out the types of items that they would like to create. So, after using some of the items during the using stage, they can reflect on the things that made their buckets feel full and then focus their energy on tinkering with some of the crafting materials to make something special to give others. That's the big thing is we want to focus on what we can do to serve others. And of course, we want to keep our own feelings into account because we know those things that make us feel good. If we can do those things for others, then surely they can make others feel good. But we do want to put the emphasis on serving others during this activity. So, with that, I decided it would also probably be a good idea as we get ready to go into the next step to have a little tutorial video just showing how to make a warm fuzzy. So this is a simple project that just all you need are some scissors and some yarn. Oh, good old internet, kind of buffering. Well, hopefully it'll catch up here in a moment. But basically, all you really need to do is by starting out with a several inches of yarn. I'd say at least maybe about 6 inches or so, depending on the age of your students. The younger, I'd say probably the longer the string you'd want to have just for them to, oh, there we go. So it's a little bit easier for them to work with. Oop, or maybe not. Um, the younger they are and the more fine motor skills they have mastered, so the shorter the string can be. But you're going to start off by snipping several inches of yarn, and then you're going to take a longer piece of yarn and start just wrapping it around your finger several times. So you're just going to keep wrapping, 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 wrapping. I'd say you could wrap anywhere from, oh, for little fingers, maybe about 15 to 20 times. Of course, the fluffier you want your warm fuzzy to be, the more you would want to wrap. But you just want to make sure you let students know not to wrap too tight. Oh my goodness. Okay, here we go. So we're cutting off that first string there. So that's the one that we're going to use to tie the middle before we actually cut and make our pom-pom. So then I'm going to use a couple of fingers to hold on to, ooh, and you can see this is my experimenting phase here as well. Trying to hold on to that string, just going to keep wrapping. It might be a good idea to suggest to students to put a little bit of space between their fingers. If they keep their fingers super close and they keep wrapping and wrapping really tight, then their little fingers might get stuck. all that work that they were doing might become unraveled. But then again, that's part of the process. Ooh, skipped forward a little bit there. But anyways, you take it off your fingers after you snip the end. And then sliding it off, then you're going to take that medium length that you had cut there earlier. You're going to set that down, and then you're going to place your bundle of yarn still, oh my goodness, still kind of wrapped all together. And then you're going to use that string there in the middle to tie a double knot in the middle, cinching it in really tightly. Then after you do that, you can take your scissors and feed it back through the loops, and then that's how you trim it to actually make the pom-pom part of it. And then after you do that on both sides, cutting all the loops, so you can, of course, fluff it out, trim any of the longer pieces that you may have, give it a nice shape to it. I have those longer pieces dangling from where I tied the middle of the pom-pom. So I'm going to cut those down to size. And now we have a warm fuzzy, and we can go and use that to fill someone's bucket. Just like that. So with that experimenting phase, you saw me do a little bit of that in the video. And I guess you could say you saw a little bit of me doing experimenting with my presentation, trying to add in other videos and other features. So it's always good to learn new things. But anyways, during this time, students can spend their time experimenting with lots of different materials. So of course they can use different kinds of yarn to craft their own warm fuzzies. You can make them as bright and as colorful as you want. And of course we can also fill each other's buckets by writing encouraging notes using scrapbook paper, stickers, stamps, pens, markers. So if you have students who are really young and they're not quite there yet with their writing, so they could draw pictures. Some students might want to do activities like folding origami hearts or stars. So any other ideas that they can think of to fill someone else's bucket. So you never know, they might surprise you with some other ideas that they could come up with. For the creating phase, students can then work to mass produce their warm fuzzies and notes of encouragement to distribute to families and friends, because we don't want to just fill one person's bucket. We want to fill lots of buckets. And to promote entrepreneurship, students could set up a warm fuzzy shop and use, at our school, we call them swamp bucks, to purchase products to be delivered to their friends' classrooms. I'm thinking about like the movie Mean Girls, where they send candy cane grams to each other with like a candy cane and a sweet note. You can easily do something like that with warm fuzzies just throughout the school year. And that is my presentation. So hopefully it is something that I can actually put into place whenever I get a library position. And even in the meantime, I can be instilling this activity and spreading kindness to others with my own students. Thank you for watching.